Imagine coming home after a grueling day of running your billion-dollar empire, only to find a complete stranger cradling your baby. For Elise Montgomery, that nightmare became reality. But what happened next would change everything she thought she knew about trust, family, and second chances. If you're touched by this story of a mother's fierce love and unexpected connection, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more emotional journeys that remind us what truly matters in life. The key card slid into the lock with a familiar beep, and Elise Montgomery pushed open the heavy door to her penthouse apartment. Her shoulders ached from tension, her Louboutins pinching after 12 hours of wear. The board meeting had run late, as usual, with old men in expensive suits questioning her every decision despite the fact that Montgomery Tech had tripled its value since she'd taken over as CEO 3 years ago. All she wanted now was to hold her 6-month-old daughter, Lily. To breathe in that perfect baby smell and remember why she pushed herself so hard every day. Being a single mother and running a technology empire wasn't what she'd planned, but after her husband David's sudden death during her second trimester, Elise had no choice but to forge ahead alone. The penthouse was quiet as she set down her briefcase and slipped off her shoes. Mrs. Chen, the nanny, usually greeted her at the door with Lily in arms, giving a detailed report of the day's activities. The silence was unusual. "Mrs. Chen?" Elise called out, patting across the marble floor toward the nursery. No answer. A soft humming floated from the kitchen, a deep, masculine voice singing what sounded like a lullaby. Elise's blood turned to ice. She grabbed the heavy crystal paperweight from the entryway table and moved silently toward the sound, her heart hammering against her ribs. When she reached the doorway, the paperweight nearly slipped from her fingers. A man she had never seen before sat at her kitchen island, cradling Lily in one arm while feeding her a bottle. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair peppered with gray at the temples. He wore jeans and a simple blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up, revealing tanned forearms. And her daughter, her precious, usually fussy daughter, was looking up at him with complete contentment, tiny fingers wrapped around one of his. Elise froze, unable to scream, unable to move. The man looked up and their eyes met. His were a startling shade of green, and they widened in surprise. "You must be Elise," he said calmly, as if there was nothing unusual about a stranger feeding her baby in her kitchen. "I'm Jack. Helen's son." Helen. Mrs. Chen's first name. Elise had never heard anyone call her that. "Where is Mrs. Chen?" Elise finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper, the paperweight still clutched in her white-knuckled grip. "Hospital," Jack said, his expression turning somber. "She collapsed about 3 hours ago. Possible stroke. I tried calling you, but it went straight to voicemail." Elise's free hand flew to her mouth. Her phone had died during the board meeting, and she hadn't bothered to charge it in the car. "Is she?" Elise couldn't finish the question. "She's stable," Jack said. "The doctors are running tests." "I'm sorry for scaring you. Mom gave me her emergency key. She made me promise not to leave Lily with anyone but family." Elise's legs suddenly felt weak. She sank into a chair across from Jack, setting the paperweight on the counter. Mrs. Chen had worked for her for only 6 months, since Lily was born, but the older woman had become indispensable, more than an employee. She was the closest thing to family Elise had left. "I should go to her," Elise said, reaching for her daughter. Jack carefully transferred Lily to her arms, and the baby fussed slightly at the interruption of her feeding. "The hospital said no visitors until tomorrow," Jack said. "I can finish feeding her if you'd like." Elise hesitated, studying the man across from her. There was something in his eyes, a kindness, a steadiness, that reminded her of Mrs. Chen. Still, she'd built her business on careful calculation of risk, and this man was an unknown variable. "I've got her," Elise said, taking the bottle and resuming Lily's feeding. "But thank you for being here. For not leaving her alone." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. Mom talks about you two all the time. Says Lily is the granddaughter she never had. He smiled, a crooked, genuine smile that softened his features. And she says you work too hard. Despite everything, Elise felt a small laugh escape her. She tells me that every day. She's usually right, Jack said, standing up. He was taller than she'd initially thought, well over 6 feet. I should go. Let you have your evening with Lily. Wait, Elise said, surprising herself. You don't have to leave. I mean, you should at least tell me what the doctors said. About your mother. Jack hesitated, then sat back down. They think it was a TAA, a mini-stroke. The symptoms came on suddenly while she was putting Lily down for her afternoon nap. She had the presence of mind to call me before it got worse. She never mentioned having a son, Elise said, adjusting Lily in her arms. A shadow crossed Jack's face. We've been estranged. For about 10 years. Started talking again a few months ago, right around when she started working for you. Elise nodded, not pushing for details. Everyone had their complicated family stories. Hers was a novel of tragedy and reinvention. Are you hungry? She asked suddenly. I could order something. Jack looked surprised by the offer. I wouldn't want to impose. You've been here for hours with my daughter. The least I can do is feed you. Elise managed a small smile. Besides, I hate eating alone. That was how Elise Montgomery, 34-year-old billionaire CEO and single mother, found herself sharing Thai takeout with a stranger at her kitchen island while her daughter slept peacefully in her swing nearby. Jack Chen turned out to be a contractor who specialized in sustainable building design. He lived across the city and had been slowly rebuilding his relationship with his mother after a falling out over his divorce. She thought I gave up too easily, Jack explained, twirling noodles around his fork. Maybe she was right. Mrs. Chen does have strong opinions, Elise agreed. She lectured me for an hour when I suggested hiring a night nurse to help with Lily's sleep regression. Jack laughed, a warm sound that filled the kitchen. That sounds like Mom. Always certain she knows best. And the annoying thing is, she usually does, Elise admitted. As the evening wore on, Elise found herself relaxing in Jack's company. There was something refreshingly straightforward about him. No agenda, no pretense. In her world of corporate sharks and social climbers, genuine people were rare. When Lily woke crying at midnight, Jack didn't make excuses to leave. Instead, he washed the takeout containers while Elise changed and fed her daughter. When she returned to the kitchen with a finally sleeping Lily, he was wiping down the counters. You don't have to do that, she said softly. Force of habit, he replied with a shrug. Mom raised me to clean as I go. She's trying to teach me the same, Elise admitted. I'm a slow learner. Jack smiled, then glanced at his watch. I should get going. It's late. Of course, Elise said, suddenly aware of how domestic the scene must appear, the two of them in her kitchen late at night, a baby sleeping between them. Thank you again. For everything. I'll call you tomorrow with any updates on Mom, Jack promised, gathering his jacket. And Elise? Try to get some rest. Mom would insist. After he left, Elise stood in her silent penthouse, looking out at the glittering city below. For the first time in months, the emptiness of her home felt noticeable. Acute. She'd grown so accustomed to solitude that she'd stopped feeling its weight. Until tonight. The next morning, Elise canceled her meetings and worked from home. She told herself it was because she needed to be available for updates on Mrs. Chen, but a small voice in her head suggested it might also be because she was hoping Jack would call. He did, around 10. Mrs. Chen was awake and arguing with the doctors about how long she needed to stay in the hospital. A good sign, they both agreed. Elise asked if she could visit, and Jack said he'd pick her up at noon. The hospital room was bright with flowers, apparently Mrs. Chen had many friends in the city who'd already heard the news. The woman herself looked smaller in the hospital bed, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "You should be at work," were her first words to Elise. "Hello to you too," Elise replied, setting a potted orchid on the windowsill. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm surrounded by overreacting children," Mrs. Chen huffed. "The doctors say I need rest. I can rest at home while taking care of Lily." "Mom," Jack said in a warning tone. "We've discussed this." Mrs. Chen waved a dismissive hand. "Fine, fine. I will stay until tomorrow. But then I'm coming back to work." "Actually," Elise said carefully, "the doctors recommended at least 2 weeks of recovery." Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed. "And who will take care of Lily? You work 16-hour days." "I can adjust my schedule," Elise said, though even as the words left her mouth, she wasn't sure how. The upcoming product launch required her constant attention, and the investors were already nervous about the timeline. "I could help," Jack offered unexpectedly. Both women turned to look at him. He shrugged. "I'm between major projects right now. I can work remotely for a few weeks." "You?" Mrs. Chen looked skeptical. "You've never taken care of a baby." "I helped raise Mia until she was 4, Jack said quietly, referring to his ex-wife's daughter from a previous relationship. "I think I can handle it." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "You were good with her," she admitted. Elise looked between mother and son, feeling like she was missing pieces of a complicated history. "I couldn't ask you to do that," she said to Jack. "You're not asking. I'm offering," he replied. "Mom needs to recover properly, and you need to run your company. I'm the logical solution." Logical. Elise appreciated that framing. It made the arrangement seem less intimate. Less like she was inviting a virtual stranger into her life. "We could try it," she said slowly. "On a trial basis." And so began the strangest 2 weeks of Elise Montgomery's life. Jack moved into the guest room of her penthouse, bringing only a duffel bag of clothes and his laptop. He took to caring for Lily with a natural ease that both impressed and unsettled Elise. By the 3rd day, he had memorized her schedule, knew exactly how she liked her bottle prepared, and could get her to sleep faster than even Mrs. Chen had managed. Elise found herself rushing home from work earlier than usual, eager to see them both. Jack would have dinner ready, nothing fancy, but always delicious, and they would eat together while Lily played on her activity mat. He would tell her about their day, the walk in the park, the developmental milestone Lily had reached, the funny reaction she'd had to tasting avocado for the first time. For the first time since David died, Elise felt the penthouse becoming a home again, filled with conversation and laughter. It terrified her. "You're good with her," Elise said one evening as they watched Lily attempting to crawl on the living room floor. "Better than I am." Jack looked at her in surprise. "That's not true." "It is," Elise insisted. "You're so natural with her. I always feel like I'm going to break her or mess her up somehow." Jack was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" he finally asked. "Something I've never told anyone, not even my mom?" Elise nodded, curious. "After Mia's father came back into the picture and my ex decided to try again with him, I was devastated. Not just because my marriage was over, but because I lost Mia too. She wasn't biologically mine, but I'd been her dad for 4 years." His voice grew rough. "The courts didn't recognize any rights for me. One day I had a daughter, the next I didn't." "Jack, I'm so sorry," Elise said softly. He shook his head. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because being here, with Lily, has been healing something I thought would stay broken forever. And watching you with her, you're an amazing mother, Elise. The way you look at her, like she's the most precious thing in the world. The way you sing to her when you think no one's listening. The fact that despite running a billion-dollar company, you never miss her bedtime if you can help it. Elise felt tears prickling behind her eyes. I'm trying, she whispered. I just wish David could see her. Could help me. Jack reached across the couch and squeezed her hand briefly. He would be proud of you both. The moment hung between them, charged with something Elise wasn't ready to name. She pulled her hand away gently and stood up. I should get some work done before bed. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'll put her down. As the 2 weeks neared their end, Elise found herself dreading Jack's departure. Mrs. Chen was recovering well and insisted she was ready to return to work. There was no logical reason for Jack to stay. The night before he was set to leave, Elise came home to find the penthouse transformed. Soft music played, candles flickered on the dining table, and the smell of something delicious filled the air. What's all this? She asked, setting down her briefcase. Jack emerged from the kitchen, wearing an apron over his usual jeans and button-down. A thank you dinner, he said. For letting me stay here. For trusting me with Lily. I should be thanking you, Elise said, suddenly shy. You've been incredible. Dinner was the best meal she'd had in months, a perfectly cooked steak, roasted vegetables, and a chocolate soufflé that made her close her eyes in bliss. They talked easily, as they had come to do over the past 2 weeks, about everything and nothing. Jack told her about the sustainable housing project he was starting next month. Elise shared her vision for Montgomery Tech's new healthcare initiative. After dinner, they moved to the balcony with glasses of wine, looking out at the city lights. Lily was asleep, the monitor showing her peaceful face on the coffee table beside them. I'm going to miss this view, Jack said, leaning against the railing. Just the view? Elise asked before she could stop herself. Jack turned to look at her, his eyes serious in the dim light. No, he said simply. Not just the view. Elise took a deep breath. Jack, The baby monitor erupted with Lily's sudden wail. They both jumped, the moment broken. Jack smiled ruefully. Perfect timing. I'll get her, Elise said, setting down her wine glass. When she returned with a settled Lily, Jack was cleaning up the kitchen. The domesticity of the scene hit her again, how quickly she'd grown accustomed to his presence, how empty the penthouse would feel tomorrow. Jack, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Would you consider staying? Not as a favor to your mother, but as Lily's nanny. Officially. I'd pay you, of course. Jack turned from the sink, surprise evident on his face. You want to hire me? Yes, Elise said, then faltered. Unless you need to get back to your own place. Your own life. Jack dried his hands slowly on a dish towel. My life hasn't felt very much like my own since Mia, he admitted. These past 2 weeks have been the most alive I've felt in years. Is that a yes? Elise asked, hope rising in her chest. It's a yes, Jack said. But I have conditions. Elise raised an eyebrow. Such as? You work less, he said firmly. No more 16-hour days. Home by 6 at least 3 days a week. Jack. Non-negotiable, he said. Lily needs her mother. And you need a life outside that office. Elise wanted to argue, to explain the pressures of her position, the expectations she faced. But looking down at Lily's peaceful face against her shoulder, she knew he was right. Okay, she agreed. What else? I cook dinner on the nights you're